Atlanta just told Trae Young, without saying a word, prove it. ESPN reports the Hawks didn't offer a max extension, and Trae answered the quiet part out loud with an hourglass emoji, the classic time's ticking warning he loves to drop. For most franchise guys, this moment never even sees daylight. You lock in early, post the handshake photos, and everyone pretends loyalty is simple math. Not here. Not with a guard whose game splits opinions and whose number is big enough to bend a cap sheet out of shape. That's the awkward sting. When your own team hesitates, it invites the rest of the league to hesitate with them. And it's not just about money. It's messaging. A public non-max says, "We're not fully convinced this scales to May." The tweet says, "You'll regret waiting." Fans pick sides. Local radio becomes a referendum on usage rate, defense, and leadership. Teammates see the noise on their phones before shoot-around. The brand people call. The agent calls louder. All of it funnels into a single question with no polite answer. Who blinks first? Because if Trae goes nuclear this season, Atlanta has to pay at peak heat. If the year turns messy, the emoji hardens into leverage. That's why the hourglass isn't a cute text. It's the clock for two careers at once. Trae's as a max face, and the front offices as stewards who either believed in time or ran out of it. So what actually happened? The Hawks didn't put a max extension on the table for Trae Young. No wiggle room leaks. No close but not quite. Just not the number. In response, Trae did what stars do in 2025. He spoke an emoji. The hourglass made its appearance, the cryptic timing lined up with the report, and he doubled down with the pay the man early vibe after a high-profile NFL trade demand elsewhere. Translation: this gets uglier the longer you wait. You almost never see a franchise player get the public "maybe later" from his own team. That's why it rang so loud. Even silence in this situation is noisy. But here's the subtext. No max today doesn't always mean you're not our guy. Sometimes it means we want more proof, especially when the proof we need only shows up in May. And front offices have gotten smarter, colder, and way less sentimental about these decisions. They'll stare across the table at your agent and say, "We like you, but we like flexibility more." On paper, Trae is an elite playmaker with a top-tier offensive engine. Points and assists pile up like clockwork. Night to night, he wins you regular season possessions, solves half-court puzzles, and puts a neon sign on your brand. But May basketball is rude. It'll take a guard's size and defense, put it under a microscope, and say, "We're going to hunt this every single trip." In the playoffs, good coaches build traps tailored to your habits, help stunts earlier, lanes close faster, bigs lurk in your floater space. By Game 3, every decoy you love gets sniffed out. That's where the skepticism lives. The Hawks saw the 2021 magic. Remember the run that made Atlanta feel like they'd skipped a rebuild and fast forward. And then they saw the flip side. Defenses loading up, possessions turning sticky, and the margin for error shrinking to the size of Trae himself. It's not that he can't win. It's that the path to winning with him at your cap number is razor thin. You need a stacked defense behind him. You need switchable wings who clean up mistakes. You need a big who can guard in space and catch lobs without coughing up turnovers. That shopping list is expensive, and expensive gets complicated when your star's next contract eats the room you need to shop. Leverage is oxygen in this league, and Trae's camp knows it. Cap space is the threat. If you don't pay me, I'll just walk to Team X. Do they love him? Maybe. Do they have the room? Possibly. Does that matter? It does to Atlanta. Even if a cap space team isn't a contender, it's still leverage. That threat turns into whispers, and the whispers become, "Trae is intrigued by what the Wizards are building," or "Trae's camp likes the idea of New Yorkish spotlight." Nets, anyone? You've seen this movie 100 times. The leaks aren't romance, they're chess. And then there's the Brunson template. Jalen Brunson took a team-friendly deal and unlocked an arms race of depth in New York. That's the dream for a front office. Pay a little less now, then fill every hole around your guy. But Brunson's discount was a calculated bet, and it aged like top shelf. Trae's not trying to copy that script. Taking a haircut publicly reads like an admission. "I'm not on the tier I think I'm on." That's pride. That's branding. And that's understandable. If you believe you're the engine, you don't agree to be the mid-size sedan. All right, let's follow the smoke. Miami Heat. Culture, structure, Spoelstra. You can see the basketball logic immediately. Bam Adebayo sets the screens, lob gravity opens the middle, shooters widen the court, and Spo demands connected defense behind the ball. Yes, there's overlap with Tyler Herro, and yes, Herro's name would be in bold on every mock trade graphic within 5 minutes. But the vision is clean. Trae's creation plus Miami's defensive backbone. That's a legit identity. The price? Spo and the front office would grind Atlanta for a reasonable number. And that's where leverage screams. If Trae's camp says, "We'll walk for nothing," Atlanta has to decide. Decent package now or zero later. Minnesota Timberwolves. This one is sneaky good. Mike Conley's aging curve is real, and Minnesota needs a true table setter who can spam half-court solutions when the playoffs turn the treadmill to max incline. Trae can be that. Ant Edwards wants the ball, yes, but having a guard who warps defenses lets Ant catch the ball in advantage, not in a chokehold. Meanwhile, Rudy Gobert becomes a nightly lob threat again. Their top 10 defense provides the insulation Trae needs, and the offense's biggest wart, stalled half-court sets, gets actual medicine. The friction? Reps. Who initiates late? You'd need clear rules and real buy-in. The upside? A contender with a quiver full of answers. Boston Celtics, the shocker. Boston leans ISO late and survives on elite defense and threes. Imagine swapping some late-clock dribble drone for a pick-and-roll engine that manufactures layups and free throws without requiring a mid-ISO miracle. Trae's gravity turns weak-side defenders into statues. The Celtics' defense can hide him better than most, and the organizational discipline trims the wild stuff while keeping the fireworks. The problem? Assets and willingness. You're messing with championship chemistry. But if the front office believes their biggest risk is late-game playmaking drying up, this isn't crazy. It's a gamble, but championships are gambles in tuxedos. All three landings solve a real basketball problem. All three would demand compromise on price. That's where Trae's hourglass matters. The more he can convince the world time is running out, the more Atlanta has to deal now instead of risking empty hands later. There's a quiet playbook front offices use when the numbers say elite, but the film and the calendar whisper, wait. Step 1, delay the vault. Step 2, gather more playoff data. Step 3, let the market talk first. History is littered with stars who didn't get paid on their preferred timeline, bristled, leaked interest elsewhere, and eventually moved. Sometimes for a haul, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. The pattern isn't cruelty, it's cost. In the new CBA world, second apron penalties turn sentiment into spreadsheets. You don't just pay a max, you inherit a maze of constraints. Fewer mechanisms to add help, stiffer tax pain, tighter flexibility when injuries or slumps punch holes in your plan. Teams want 2 hard answers before they commit. Can we defend at a near title level with you on the floor, and does your creation still print advantages after coaches script you for 7 games? If either answer is mushy, the prove-it window opens. Maybe the star responds with better off-ball habits, better shot diet, fewer live ball turnovers, sturdier defense. Maybe he doesn't, and the team quietly lines up options. Sometimes both sides do everything right and the cap still says no. That's when leverage rises. Agents seed mutual interest stories. Execs leak, "We love him at the right number," and fans argue over what right means. When the gap won't close, history usually does. The logo on the chest changes before the number on the check does. What the Hawks want is simple to say and brutal to achieve, a number that lets them build. If Trae takes a discount, they can shop for the switchable 2/3 defender, the low turnover big, the bench ball handler who breaks droughts, and a wing who won't get hunted. That's a lot of roles. Depth is how you keep a small guard star viable in May. The cap sheet is the map to that depth. A max at the very top tightens everything. Suddenly, the guy you kinda like becomes the guy you have to live with because you can't afford anybody else. But Trae's pride isn't a bug. It's the reason he's in this conversation. You don't put up his numbers by thinking small. The snag is that his proudest version and Atlanta's prudent version are pulling on the same rope, in opposite directions. If he agrees to less, it's a public admission that the league had a point about his ceiling. If he doesn't, the Hawks are justified in waiting, because the wrong max can trap you for half a decade. This isn't just about Trae Young. It's about the league's evolving math on small, heliocentric guards at championship level. The regular season rewards skill and usage. The playoffs expose height and matchups. If you're going to live at 6'1" and run the world, you need either a superstructure of defense around you or all-time shot-making that survives the blender. Curry got there by becoming more than a shooter. Off-ball gravity, strength, and a team designed like a Swiss watch. Everyone else in that mold pays the playoff tax unless they replicate the ecosystem. Atlanta's front office isn't heartless, it's careful. Trae isn't selfish, he's betting on himself. Both can be true. And that's why the hourglass isn't taunting the Hawks, it's measuring both sides' courage. So yeah, this is embarrassing for Trae Young, not because he's a bad player, but because the league just saw his own team hesitate. That bruise doesn't heal until one of two things happens. Either he drags them deep in the playoffs and dares them to doubt him again, or the jersey changes and the narrative resets in a new city. Until then, the clock keeps pouring sand. If you're Atlanta, you're praying proof shows up before the market does. And if you're Trae, you're hoping the next time you post that hourglass, it's counting down to a parade, not a flight out of town. But here's the twist. What if both are true? What if Trae forces a monster season and the Hawks still decide the number is too loud? That's when embarrassing becomes explosive. And when that happens, don't be shocked if the jersey he's holding up next year isn't red. It's the color of a team that promised him two things Atlanta wouldn't give: the ball and the belief to back it with max money. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video. Thanks.